Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another week at Beyond the Trailer Park. And we have a full house tonight. This is fun. Of course, as always, joining us from the wilds of Pennsylvania. Good evening, Beth.
Maddy?
Yay! And hopefully you're not going to be garbly tonight, so things are looking good so far.
Yep.
And no more jackhammers. They were jackhammering.
It's quiet now, so you won't hear the jackhammer in the background.
Yay! Yeah, because I'm sure they would love it if you go, yo, can you shut the fuck up? I'm trying to do an atheist podcast here. Do you mind? That would go over really well. And from the wilds of Mississippi, good evening, Miss Morgan.
Good evening.
And from the not so wilds of Maine, good evening, Tracy.
Hello.
Hi. And all the way from Minnesota, we have Maddy and Hertzey this evening. Good evening, ladies.
Hello.
Hey, yeah, sure.
We can have a competition for who has the thickest accent, right?
Sorry.
That's obligatory, yes. Oh, and I just see we have Ozymandias Ramses over in the chat. Hello, Ozzy. And yes, you are indeed first. We'll see if anybody else shows up over there. So, Maddy and Hertzey, you folks do an actual radio show, which is kind of going the way of the dinosaur these days. So it's kind of cool that
dinosaurs are cool.
Don't tell our donors.
I like the Velociraptor of radio shows, okay?
The Velociraptor radio shows, I like that.
Yes.
And your show is called Atheists Talk, which you do very well, I might add.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so how long have you folks been doing that? And is it just the two of you, or I think there was 2 or 3 more people involved, yes?
Well, I know you said you were listening to our last show, and
Yes.
that actually was a panel show that I put together. The show itself has been going on since 2008, January of 2008. I actually was told that our 10th anniversary is coming up. We have to do something. I'm actually the producer. Maddy is my right hand. She does so much. It would take forever to explain it all. But she helps get us like on the internet. I've only been the producer for about 8 or 9 months or so. We've had several producers since 2008, but that's when it started.
That's amazing. That's really cool.
Yeah.
And you're sponsored by Minnesota Atheists, so they help make the magic work. Yes.
Yes, our 2 main sponsors are Minnesota Atheists and Cucumbers, which is a really delicious restaurant in Edina. They have it's a all-you-can-eat buffet, but they have, I think, the biggest salad bar I've ever seen.
Yes, it's. Do you also have like Golden Corral or Old Country?
Not up here, but
I
love Golden Corral.
It's like that. But, it's like that, but good.
That's good. That's accurate. Yeah. That's accurate.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I've been to a couple iffy Golden Corrals, mostly down in Georgia and those areas. So
I didn't know there was any other kind.
I know, I was about to say, I didn't know if there was a not iffy Golden Corral.
They just
the one in Hickory is not bad.
They just came up to Minnesota. I don't know if they were ever up here before, but my kids really wanted to go. My kids are all adults. They don't live in the house. And while we were there, we had to leave the restaurant because the restaurant was filling with smoke because of the grease fire. And I was like, yeah, this seems like part.
Whoa. Okay. That's a bit sketch.
And if it was a new restaurant, that's a bit scary.
Yep.
Yeah.
I work in food service and have for 40 years.
Yeah, you should be able to avoid a grease fire, I'm thinking. Just
I think you have to go pretty far out to get to a Golden Corral, though. No? Where's the close?
Anyway, sorry.
Oh, there was one.
Talk.
There was one we went to, and I think it was in Hickory, was Weston Sizzler or something.
Sizzler? I love Sizzler.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. See, a lot of my experience down south is really down south. So, like Georgia, I've spent a lot of time there, a lot of time in North Carolina, a lot of time in Virginia. So, yeah, I was even married. I was married to a guy from Richmond for a few years. So, there's that. Oh, well. So, is this, both of you, have you done broadcasting stuff before? Or is this like the first time you've forayed into this?
This is definitely my first time foraying into it.
And I've been podcasting since 2014 on my own show.
Okay.
And then I got invited to come on to Atheists Talk as a guest. And that was about maybe a year before Hertzey came on board. And then afterwards, one of our former producers said, "Hey, do you want to come on and host sometimes?" And I was like, "Sure, I don't know what I'm doing."
That's how we get him in. We start with letting them, because my first time was guesting, and we talked about Dungeons and Dragons and the Satanic Panic, which I can forever.
So Morgan and Tracy wouldn't know anything about that, would you? The sneak him in as a guest bit, would you?
Never heard of it. What is that?
But it works.
Yeah, it does.
Yes, it works very well.
It absolutely does. That's so awesome, though. So, were either of you religious to start off with, and if so, what flavors?
I was religious. I was Catholic. I know this is a contradiction in terms, but my parents raised me kind of a liberal Catholic. So
Gotcha.
I grew up with geeky stuff and all that fun stuff. And it was pretty easy for me to move from that.
So you kind of showed up for midnight mass and Easter kind of thing?
We did do the midnight mass for Easter and Christmas Eve, but then we skipped mass in the morning. So we never went to Christmas Day or never went to Easter Day. So we got to sleep in.
Okay. That's all right. I can deal with that.
And I was a fundie. I was kind of raised like the Protestant, where you go to church Easter and Christmas, and that's about it. But then when I turned 18 and met my wife, and we were like, we need to take all of our kids to church. I don't know why we thought that, but that's what we did, because we were adulting in America. and I became a evangelical fundie, hating, anything LGBT. I taught my 5-year-old to tell people that his parents, or not his parents, but his aunts and uncles, were going to go to hell. So thankfully, my kids still turned out okay, despite my parenting. But yeah, I moved to atheism like in 2008 when I started to before I came out.
Right.
Before I started to transition, and basically, thank you, internet, is all I can say to that. So
what made you guys deconvert, as much as I hate that term? What was your kick in the pants that got you to rethink your backgrounds?
So for me, it was, I ended up going to a religious college, and it was an Assemblies of God. And by this point, I was already starting to do things like going to Rocky Horror Picture Show. I had met a wonderful girl who was a Wiccan. And then to hear all these terrible things about that made me just be like and go, nope, I don't think I can do this. And so I basically quit religion for a while. And then my mom invited me upstairs to watch a movie with her. And it was just a whole bunch of really awesome atheists talking about how they don't think there is a God. And it was just downhill from there.
Awesome.
And for me, there was something that got preached about in our evangelical church was Jesus is going to make you a new creation. You're supposed to, you're going to be filled with this love, and you're going to change, and all your sins going to be washed away, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, I believe this. I really love you, Jesus. Why do I want to still suck that guy's dick? Because I shouldn't have that. Because before I trained, I pretended to be male for as long as I could, and okay, well, I shouldn't have these feelings. What do I have to do to not want, outside of the fact that I wouldn't do it because it's cheating, because I've been married and monogamous for a long time, but I shouldn't even want to do that. What's going? And that started my started questioning. It's like, okay, well, and then it's like listening. Skeptics Guide to the Universe is another podcast, which I'm sure everybody's heard of because it's a huge podcast. But I started listening to that with podcasts too, and it's like they're talking about science and stuff, and that's not what my pastor said. What else was he wrong about, or what else is he not?
Excellent point.
You know,
there was
so
an article I read today that touched on the what 18-year-old fundies would like just in their first day of school, coming from a homeschool fundamentalist background, going to a secular college, and it was actually kind of interesting because it's like creationism and science is bad, and then they get into their first biology class or their first philosophy class and stuff like that. So yeah, it's kind of.
Well, I was listening to you, Maddy, and I was hearing myself at some point because I started out in, we were saying before the show, a very, very liberal branch of Christianity, but at the age of 13 I was talked into becoming a Calvinist, and that was fun. And I was going around telling my like 8-year-old brother, you know, you better repent, you're going to hell. And
but he's predestined.
Yeah,
I know, but they didn't teach me that part at that point. Right?
That's a huge part of Calvinism.
I know, but they were only going like one Bible verse at a time. So, you know, I was only like 15 and they hadn't got to that part yet. So I quit before I even got to the whole predestination stuff. I think they were trying to ease us into that. But.
Yeah, ease you into the crazy.
It's like Scientology.
It is. It is. Like, I remember the Bible study, and I say study because it was always, here's a verse, now here's what it means. We didn't actually study shit. But where they said, you know, the wife has to obey the husband. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. What? And my friend that got me to go, oh, yes, well, that's how God wants it, you know? And I'm like, okay, I'm not marrying anybody anytime soon, but we have to come back to this when, you know, if I start dating somebody seriously, this is up for debate here. But thankfully, I never got that far.
Yeah. My mother
and
has.
There's poor Tracy.
Sorry, what's that, Beth?
I was gonna say poor Tracy is shaking her head because she didn't have to deal with any of this.
Yeah,
shit.
so Maddy and Hertzey. Tracy is our resident lifelong atheist. So she loves these stories to understand how all of us got suckered into believing crazy things. So, but yeah, she oftentimes will have this look of, what the hell's wrong with you people? Look.
See, she kind of flashed. That's what made me think of it. Is she kind of flashed this little.
Yeah, it's, you know, I know indoctrination and social pressure and, you know, like, so academically I understand that, but sometimes I read stuff and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, what is that? So yeah, sometimes it's kind of mystifying.
I don't mean to pick on you, but I know the one, I don't know, the last show you were on, we got onto this about you being a lifelong and you not fully understanding, you know, you have the head knowledge. And it's just like, so I was watching your faces as we were talking, and you just kind of twinged your lip a little bit, like, what?
Oh, yeah. I was terrible. I was telling, I mean, you know, I'm mouthy now. Imagine how obnoxious as I was as a Christian. Fuck. I probably would have slapped myself. But yeah, anybody, you know, like, you're going to hell if you don't repent, and you know, and I was this like mouthy little teenager.
Well, imagine.
Well, I had, and I'm sorry, I think it's Maddy. I'm so bad with names. It took me weeks to just remember Deb and Beth. I think it was Maddy who said you were telling your kids to just tell their aunts and uncles, y'all are going to hell.
Well, they were Wiccan.
And I had one of my daughter's now ex-playmates. Actually, I had that experience where she was in my house just a few months ago, and I'm sure she brought it up with my daughter, who said my mother doesn't believe in God because it's no big deal. It's a kind of a non-issue here. And so this child decided she needed to tell me that if I didn't go get a Catholic Bible and start believing in God, that I was going to hell. So,
I'm sorry.
Oh, it had to be a Catholic book.
just like, oh yeah, I recognize that
the
experience.
Catholic Bible.
Yeah.
That's a Catholic
Yikes.
Bible, whatever that is. And I just said, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Is the Catholic
And then we never
Bible?
had another play date.
Yeah. I was gonna say, does the Catholic Bible come with like how to hide your pedophile in the back? Is that what that is?
It does come with extra books.
Catholic
Yeah.
Bibles have an added part of the Song of Solomon that's specifically about the pedophiles.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in the back. Trust me, it's
I
in the back.
actually got I found a Catholic Bible at a thrift store recently. I'll have to check that out.
I have a Bible that belonged to my grandmother, so I don't know. Maybe that's a Catholic Bible. They were Catholic as hell, you know. Pardon the pun. They were as Catholic as it gets. You know, the mass in
I would
twice
I would
a
be
day.
thinking that's a Catholic Bible, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. The 13
You know,
extra books.
earlier something was brought up about like the kids that were coming out, raised fundamentalist and whatever, and homeschooled, and coming out and like their first day at class when they're like 18. And we actually had a guest a couple weeks ago where she was homeschooled, and she didn't think she was in the quiverful movement or anything like that, but she was in a fundamentalist homeschooling. Although interestingly, she'd never heard the term fundamentalist described to her. And then I described what my upbringing, what my family and religion was like. She goes, "Yep, we were fundamentalists."
Well, I mean, one caveat to throw out with the homeschooling. Now, I do know a lot of secular and atheist families that do homeschool their children. And some of it is, for lack of a better term, religious reasons, but also, like in my area, the high school and the elementary school aren't bad, but if you are a highly intelligent child, it's not good. So the parents have taken it. So there is that aspect that the schools aren't meeting. But I was reading, I'm rereading Kingdom Coming by Michelle Goldberg. And one of the biggest points that people miss with the whole religious right movement is that it's been a movement, it's been in action in our time since 1980, but it's longer than that. But she talks about how the homeschooling is a tactic that they use to indoctrinate these kids, and we're seeing the first wave of it. And it's funny. I mean, and some of these kids, you know, it's not necessarily quiverful, like you said, Maddy. It's basically Ferris wants people to homeschool. If you're a religious fundamentalist, evangelical, he wants you to homeschool them, to indoctrinate them, so that they have no clue.
Indoctrinate and insulate them.
Yeah, and to insulate, because I went to a fundamentalist boarding school, and it was kind of like, it was just like being homeschooled, except for they controlled every single aspect of the environment that I was in at all times, and I was in that for 3 years. So yeah, I can imagine.
By the way, here's my lovely, really creepy looking Catholic Bible.
Ooh, it
That's
is
cool.
It looks.
It's metal.
Is it Catholic? Is it?
It is. It's specifically a Catholic Bible, and
I'm actually surprised it's not more detailed on the cross, because Catholics are kind of morbid in that sense.
No Jesus on this one. This was published in 1962, and it's like that really, really old 1950s plastic.
Oh.
So. Yeah, and it's interesting. It has to Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, souvenir of the Cana Conference, February 26, 1962, from some other person. And a Cana Conference, I had to go look this up. A Cana Conference was when a bunch of Catholic couples would get together and talk about how horrible society was. and influencing their, you know, like the satanic influence on children and how to raise good Catholic kids and all of that shit. So
they must be fun at parties.
Oh,
yeah, I know, hey? Maybe they have like the weekly exorcism in the back room or something. I don't know, but
a really good book that I highly recommend about Catholicism is God's Bankers. Anybody else here read that? It's a history of the Vatican Bank.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
So, you know, it doesn't touch on, you know, then of course there's a history of the popes who were all really quite loathsome garbage people, and you know, the history of the Crusades, and I mean there's so many different aspects that you know you could look at with the Catholic Church, but that will chill your blood. It will turn you into an anti-theist. It's pretty amazing how corrupt the history of money in the Vatican has been, and in the Catholic Church, and like for example, how the Vatican is structured so that sex abuse lawsuits are all against individual dioceses. So the Vatican is 100% insulated. The Vatican's wealth is untouchable. So individual dioceses will go bankrupt, but the Vatican's money is untouchable. So I mean, just even that is so slimy and awful. But it's a fascinating book for anybody who's interested.
And some of those dioceses were trying to hide or shuffle funds around, that if they'd had a judgment against them where they had to pay reparations, they were trying to hide the funds or say, oh, we have no money. One of them took all of their funds and shifted it towards the account for upkeep of the cemetery. And then when officials were like, where the fuck is your money? They're like, oh, it's always been that way. Which, no, it hasn't. They're just trying to hide their fucking money.
That cemetery must be nice.
I know, eh?
One of the cases in the news is New Ulm. And how far are you and Maddy from there?
Oh, God, a couple hours?
No, we're like 45 minutes.
Yeah,
oh, gosh.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a Minnesota diocese that basically are literally hiding their funds. In fact, they just got hit with another 3 or 6, I can't remember, lawsuits from more, I'm going to say alleged, because I've actually, in tracking, have found that some of the cases are being dismissed, so they're not all, you know.
I would love to watch these guys when they try to cook their books, because I'm an accountant, and I'd love to see how they try to do it, because I'm sure it's really obvious.
That's what kills me when I read about these ones. I mean, it's like you said, they're obviously cooking their books. And it's just like, how do you hide, you know? I know in one case, I don't remember out of which state, they were supposed to put aside $576,000, and $1.3 million was supposed to be set aside for future. So in total, about $1.8 million. And they're like, well, we don't have that. But they just made a purchase not even 2 weeks before this court case of like $1.5 million for something. And it's like,
Yeah, they'll do that. They'll try to dissipate their assets, or they'll try to shuffle it around. It happens not just with churches, but with anybody who has a judgment against them. O.J. Simpson is an example I'll give often. You know, shuffling around your assets, hiding them in storage units. I mean, you name it. But the thing with churches that I think makes it so difficult is the fact that they are a religious organization, so there is less transparency. It's not as if a corporation where, you know, they have a board of directors or shareholders that they have to be accountable and transparent with, or even other nonprofits, which usually have to be transparent with the public and their donors, where their money's going. But churches have no such requirement.
Yeah, they don't have to do the 990s.
The Vatican Bank was a big money launderer for decades. They laundered money for Nazis, literally for the Nazis.
Yep. Yes.
They laundered money for the mafia. They've laundered money for Al-Qaeda. So it's only recently that they've tried to come in line with international banking regulations. But and I don't remember the specifics from the book, but it has to do something with the fact that they're a nation state, in addition to a religious organization.
They have sovereignty.
So right, so they don't have to disclose anything. So they're basically a mob organization.
Well, I've always said the Catholic Church is the most corrupt institution known to mankind. Like,
in the history of humanity, the Catholic Church is the single most corrupt organization that the human race has ever conceived.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at, like, I'm a history nerd, and because I've studied a lot of English and some European history, that's completely tied with the history of the Catholic Church. And I mean, they've had their little mitts into everything nefarious from the dawn of civilization, basically. You know, since they've been around, they're into whatever backroom shit they can get into. My favorite, of course, is the indulgences in the Middle Ages. If anybody doesn't know what that was, if you had money, you could go to the church and give them your money however they wanted, and they could come out and say, you are forgiven for a multitude of various things. And you could even get them like proactive. So you're like, well, I really want to kill this guy, so I'm going to go get an indulgence and pay the church a bunch of money so that I will be absolved of killing this guy when I go and kill him next week, kind of thing.
Did y'all ever read The Amber Spyglass and his Dark Materials series by Philip Pullman?
I didn't.
The Golden Compass. It's fantastic.
I read The Golden Compass a long time ago, but I'd never read any of the rest of them.
The whole series. And he actually mentions that he specifically wrote it as an atheist to counter C.S. Lewis, because he wanted little kids to grow up and read it and become atheists, which I thought was fantastic.
That is good.
There is a priest in the book. I mean, they call it something different, the magisterium, but it's the church. There is a priest who gets pre-absolved to go kill one of the characters. And he's like, I've been working my whole life doing pre-penance for this murder.
So that I can,
And I was like, this is such a weird concept. And I had to looked up, I was like, no, that's pretty much the indulgence system.
Or really forgiveness in general, do whatever. And then you're like, oh, Jesus, I'm sorry.
It was an accident.
Yeah. Well, there was I heard a story, NPR a few years ago did a story, and I'd love to find a book on it. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a phenomenon where for a period in history, when women wanted to commit suicide, they knew they'd go to hell. They couldn't be absolved for committing suicide, so they would kill their children so that they could get the death penalty.
Oh, that's lovely.
Because they could be absolved for killing their children, but they could not be absolved for killing themselves.
Oh my God.
That's kind of like
it took a long time for the church, and I believe it was the Catholic Church. It may not have been the Catholic Church, but I believe it was the Catholic Church to say, hey, wait a second, maybe we should figure out how to keep these women from murdering their infants. Yeah.
At least they went to heaven.
Oh,
I mean, on the bright side, your infant.
Right. The baby went to heaven, and the mother went. Yeah. So
you did the best thing for that baby you could do.
Yeah. They could be forgiven.
Right out of the mind of William Lane Craig.
There's something. Yep. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how I see what religion does to morality.
Oh, for sure.
That makes sense to people.
Well, look at William Lane Craig. He's actively argued in debates when he's confronted with, why does God basically kill children? Well, it's okay if God does it because they just go to heaven and everything's peachy, and
it's the whole divine command. Yeah. Divine command theory. when people question the justification for the genocide in the Bible, he's like, well, God commanded it, therefore it's good. So, you know,
Doesn't matter.
morally. But
Yeah.
it's going back to Tracy's point with the killing the children and justifying it, you know, because they can't commit suicide. That's the whole thing behind a lot of your child murders, or, well, even some adults have been killed, where people do exorcisms that fail. I know in 2000, was it 2015? It might have been 14. There was a period from January to March where almost every day I was posting about a botched exorcism where the parents thought their child were demon possessed and they killed them for that reason. What religion does to people, and I mean, they twist their mind.
Absolutely.
Topic that we touched on before we started was the whole satanic panic. I mean, just last week, was it the Kellers, the case out of Austin? They finally awarded $3.4 million from a case that started when I was still in high school. Well, college. I mean, 21 years I spent in prison.
Yeah, I heard about that. What's the backstory on that? Because I know it's like the Satanic Panic, and, you know, I was born in '92, so...
Well, the Satanic Panic was the...
it was around, but not as crazy.
Yeah, well, it was... Go ahead. I know this is your topic.
The Satanic Panic kind of started in the 1970s and 80s. There's a whole mix of things that kind of got it started. The Kellers specifically was the child care portion of it.
Oh, that's right.
So the kids said that they were being sexually molested, and due to the questioning and how they handled child questioning at the times, the stories became more and more fanatic, to the point where the kids accused them of killing a gorilla in the zoo. I'm very serious about this.
Couldn't they have checked that? Like, go to the zoo, see if there's a gorilla?
I know.
Well, there was one story, and I don't remember if it was the Kellers or the one out of California, where one of the children said that Chuck Norris,
wow,
okay, was involved. I can't remember the details off the top of my head, but this is how bizarre these children, well, I'm not going to blame the children, but the stories coming out of it with the therapist. And what's really sad is...
Well, in their defense, Chuck Norris is an asshole.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
besides, yeah. But two of the therapists that are involved that were involved in, say, panic are also involved in the facilitated communication scam.
Oh, it's full circle.
And I don't know, Morgan, if you remember the bit I did on the wannabe out of the Catholic Church, who is they're trying to use the whole satanic panic from a Catholic perspective. And I mean, the stories these people go, like Mike Warnke actually spoke at my college. I actually went to see him 3 times. Jack Chick, it was part of it. I mean, it's all, and they're trying to build this up again. And this is why we're seeing some of the issues we are with the botched exorcisms. Bob Larson, you guys have heard me speak about him a lot. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it necessarily left the South because I think it was still kind of going on to an extent. I mean, obviously the South is more and more religious, so I don't know if it was a satanic panic, but I remember my dad like freaked the fuck out because people at his church were like, "Oh, if your daughter wears black, she's in a cult," and you know, all this stuff. And if she listens to rock music, all this stuff. And my dad, like, his favorite band is Rush and stuff, so you'd think he would have understood that, but they just scared the. But he had all these people telling him this, so he was like, you know, they're adults who have jobs and have kids and seem normal, and he didn't think they'd have a reason to lie. So
is another really good book about the Satanic Panic, about I wish I could remember. It was a very they did a HBO or I think documentary about it. And I can't even remember what the name of that was. But the guy spent 20 years on death row, And
Oh,
when
is
they
that
finally
the
released him, he had to sign something that said he'd never sue anybody.
West
Ugh.
Memphis 3? West Memphis 3.
That's the West Memphis
yeah.
3.
Yeah.
West Memphis 3. That's right.
Yep. That
Far from me.
Yeah, that the book, I can't remember who wrote it, but the name of the book is Devil's Knot,
yeah.
and it's horrifying.
And what's also horrifying is I'm a big fan of true crime. The way they treated the crime scene, and I know it was 1991, but the way they treated it was so bad. They had things like the author looked through the police reports, and some of them had the wrong injuries on the wrong bodies. So, I mean, the case should have been dismissed. There was no way you could get a conviction, but everybody was so upset that
And coercing a confession out of a 16-year-old mentally retarded kid, and I mean, it's just and the
horrifying.
judge, and I mean, it was just absolutely unbelievable.
Is that
how-
Paradise Lost, the documentary?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that is the documentary. Yes, I did try to read Damien. What's his name? I can't remember his last name now.
Eccles?
Yes, I tried to read his book, and I mean, I have empathy for what he went through, but he's a terrible writer. I couldn't get through his book. But Devil's Knot is quite fascinating. Yeah.
oh yeah.
Well,
He also
what's
did the
really been-
performance on The Moth. Anybody listen to The Moth radio hour?
The Pod Moth Storytelling Podcast.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. His, if
Check
you
that out.
look it up on the internet, if Damien Eccles, which is why I end up reading the book, because I heard him on that, and him telling his story, and you know, just the trauma he suffered from that is really quite amazing.
I know with oh, and I just lost my thought. Damn it.
But I guess, you know, to me, the sort of for me there's a lot of problems with religion for me as a lifelong atheist, and maybe it's not different because I'm a lifelong atheist, but that religion is sort of a gateway drug to believing nonsense. It's a socially acceptable type of nonsense to believe in. So it's like, oh, well, you should follow evidence for everything else except for this.
Yeah.
So it's like it makes it easier to believe in other kinds of nonsense. And I'm not saying that every religious person believes in all kinds of other nonsense, and there's plenty of atheists who believe plenty of nonsense, but it's this socially acceptable form of utter nonsense. And also because it kills human empathy. You know, it's like people rationalize, like Beth was saying, they rationalize, this is why children starve to death. This is why children get raped. It causes people to rationalize a reason why either they deserved it or it serves some larger purpose, rather than saying, let's do something so children don't get raped anymore. So
it's also frustrating for me because they have to follow the leader. And that's what a lot of these satanic panics were, because they were following these televangelists into whatever. The 700 Club had an entire VHS about all these things that were evil. And the part specifically about Dungeons and Dragons, which I play a lot of, was just so bad. It was like I was looking at the game going, you guys don't even know what you're doing. We don't use pieces like that. You don't roll the dice like that. The DM doesn't have this big cloak thing. This is all wrong.
Well,
What started your interest in it, the Satanic Panic, out of curiosity?
Oh, what sparked the interest?
Yes.
Actually, it was the West Memphis 3. It was in 2012 where they were coming up for a possible pardon. And I just started reading into this. And then later I was part of Toastmasters and needed to do a speech on something. And I was like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons, the Satanic Panic. This will be quick. It's not quick. I've since done the radio show and a 45-minute lecture / speech with my friend Dan about it for the Minnesota Atheists.
Hertzey, I will give you fair warning. I've been doing it since 1980.
I was born in 1983.
God, you people are so young.
Sorry.
Let Let me give you a piece of personal experience. I went to a Christian college. I was full into it. I was convinced from 1978 to 82, before I went to college, to get rid of my, quote, rock collection, what little I had. It's in the bottom of the collection?
Yeah, like igneous and magma and some, you know, rocks.
What?
Metamorphic.
No, my rock album.
Oh, I thought you meant like a literal rock collection. I was like, what the hell?
Okay, so
I heart your puns.
I thought that's what you really meant.
yeah, I'm having
Pet rocks.
Yeah,
It was the 70s.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I remember pet rocks.
It was my mom.
Undiagnosed bipolar. And I didn't know for another 15 years after the fact, but in college, Bob Larson was big. Very big. So big that I ended up with a Bob Larson style exorcism, because that's what my school thought I was. Possessed.
Oh.
Yeah. Talk about fucking somebody up who wasn't already fucked up as it was, but yeah. They took because I was a cutter, they took my psych symptoms and translated it because they didn't believe in mental illness, even though they had a psychology department, which was really mind-blowing. And they interpreted it as being demonic possession. They put me through well, it's actually a deliverance. It's not the Catholic rite of exorcism, which is totally different if you've ever seen any Bob Larson videos. Although Bob Larson wasn't there, his bullshit, Jack Chick, him, and Mike Warnke were the three main influences at my school. And it developed from there. It took me until 1995 when I ended up hospitalized. I found out that the symptoms that they took as being demonic possession was actually, my bipolar. And it was funny because it was a couple years later, it was like in 97 when I dumped religion altogether. And actually since that time, I've had 2 relapses. That recovery, but I've been, as far mentally, it hasn't been an issue because I don't have that bullshit being fed into me that I'm a bad person and that Satan's behind every door.
Yeah.
So your interest is only going to grow.
That's what kills me is like, okay, so if you're blaming Satan, how is it the person's fault? Right? But you're supposed to be guilty and feel shitty about being a shitty person anyway, even though it's Satan's fault. I don't get that shit.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at people...
What'd I do wrong?
You're in trouble. No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, Beth.
No, that's all right. Go ahead. I forgot what I was going to say anyways.
I was just curious... how your children, you said your children are grown now, but how have they accepted you leaving religion, and are they still religious? Are they atheist, or what's their outlook on all of that?
I've got 5.
Holy.
I know.
That's a lot of kids.
I know. My oldest, who's 36, she is an atheist. But my 15-year-old grandson is not. But she's raising him to believe and make choices like whatever he wants to. My next 2 kids are both atheists. Then the next one is an evangelical. Not a fundy, though. He's like, part of that's because when he goes to jail, he becomes more evangelical. When he gets out of jail, he becomes less evangelical. I don't understand that. But whatever you got to do to work your system. And then my youngest son, who's part of the LGBT community, it was funny when he never had really to have a coming out story to me as far as his LGBT status. But we were sitting at the Minnesota State Fair, which is a big thing down here, and we're going past this church because there's a church at the fair, and because it's Minnesota, America, and we're sitting on this skylight ride thing. It's like a parasail. You ride it from one end of the car, like cable car. Anyway, doesn't matter. Right. But we're going over, and I see this church, and I knew that he'd bought a Bible recently, and I'm like, Drake, it's okay. I'll still love you even if you're a Christian, right? And so we had to have like this coming out talk about him being like, and he loves his Jesus like in a, you know, iffy, wishy-washy, like not really committed. He just likes to believe there's something. So I think that's probably the indoctrination that I fed him, because he was the one that went up to my brother and sister-in-laws and be like, you're going to hell. So I feel like that's, you know, my fault, really. Right. And, you know, I've already asked for forgiveness from him because he's the only one that matters to ask for forgiveness from. Yes. But so they've all been pretty cool with it. I mean, most of them have left. In fact, some of them were like, yeah, we didn't believe that shit. Like you made us go to church on Sunday and Wednesday and Saturday and whatever, but we didn't believe any of that shit.
Well, like what you were saying about being, you know, you weren't sure why you made the kids go to church, but that's kind of what you did. Like my mother, she made us go to church and Sunday school and all that shit. And for a little while after we were gone, she went, you know, to church, but she never goes now. And I really think it was because she had this drilled into her that the only way you can teach morality to children was to make them go to church. Because, I mean, I don't recall her being overly religious. Like I'm from a really long line of rednecks. So we lived on a farm, and like I said, we were from the United Church of Canada, but there was no United Church anywhere near the farm. The closest village had a Presbyterian church. So we got made to go to Sunday school at the fucking Presbyterian church because it was Sunday school and that's where you go on Sunday. And I never understood it because I'm like, well, this is Presbyterian and you said that we were united and I don't get it. And just like, shut up and go to school. Like it made no sense to me as a kid. And like the United Church, when we moved into a town that was closer to the United Church my mother grew up in. So we eventually started going there, and it was so liberal. So the young children would come to church at the first part, but right before the sermon, they would bring all of the little kids up and tell them a Bible story and then shoo them all away because, you know, we knew they would get bored shitless trying to listen to a fucking sermon. None of them would care. And I learned that because once you were 13, you could volunteer. They called it junior congregation. You could volunteer to take care of the little ones down in the church basement. And I'm like, sweet, that means I don't have to listen to the damn sermon either. So I would volunteer. But in the times where I didn't, or we were like a little bit older, like high school age, and it was sort of, you know, that was for the tweens more to do, we still had, they provided clipboards with little baggies of crayons and paper for all of the older kids that had to stay for the sermon. So my friend and I, like right up into high school, we would sit there and play hangman and fucking X's and O's through the whole damn thing, but we still got forced to go. Daylight savings time was always my favorite because my mother never remembered to change the clock and we were always miss church. It was awesome. We'd show up and I wouldn't even say anything. If I remembered, there's no way I was going to say anything. And this is when I was a Christian. I hated church that much, even as a diehard Christian. And, you know, we'd show up to church and it would be over. And I'm like, oh, darn, so daylight savings time again.
Out of curiosity.
Yes.
Hangman in church. Did you only get 3 guesses? One for the right hand, one for the left hand, and one through both feet? Like, were you nailing Jesus to the cross instead of playing
not that guy. No. That would have been better. We never thought of that.
The word is sin.
We weren't smart enough. Ozymandias in the chat. Unfortunately, he actually had to run, but he's going to come back and watch this later. He was just making mention, talking about satanic panic. He says, my own mother got freaked out by my playing D&D in my teens and seized all my books, dice, etc., and hid them from me. So even I remember that. Like, I never played D&D. Like I said, Hicks, rednecks. My fun time was playing with kittens that I smuggled in the house from the barn. So, but I even remember seeing and hearing about that on the news. Like, ooh, Dungeons and Dragons is evil. So when I became goth at the end of, or beginning of university, I was like, damn it, I wish I played D&D now. Shit.
You know, you were talking about, or I was talking about earlier with my kids being in church and taking my kids to church, and you know, we were pretty poor at the time, and the church did a lot to help us. And I look back at that, and I used to think, well, you know, maybe it was a, you know, to use a phrase, a blessing in disguise kind of thing, that, you know, we were part of the church, even though, you know, now I don't believe or whatever. But looking back, I see that more as both the hypocrisy that they wouldn't have helped us if we weren't part of the church. And also the way that, you know, the atheist says needs to step up, and this needs, and I know it's been brought up in other circles, where we need to have an atheist community like that, because it's, people see, oh, people need help, we give money to the church, instead of like, that's just a community thing. Like, you're seeing people in your community. And unfortunately, I don't see a whole lot of that. I know we've got like Foundation Beyond Belief and things like that, but
locally, I know the board just put together a committee, the Wellbeing Committee, and that's actually for people in our community. Our community does have a fair amount of older people there, and so it's to, you know, keep an eye on them. Do you need anything? Pick up your meds, drop you off to your appointments. So we're trying to get into there. So maybe you should talk to.
I just feel like community is something that the atheist community needs to do more about.
Well,
because it's not fair that the churches do it.
No,
I think part of the problem is like, well, I mean, speaking from personal experience, when I had my stroke 2 years ago, financially, I'm in a really rough spot. Well, I couldn't work for a good 3.5 months, so I had no way of paying for my rent. And if it wasn't for the atheist community, specifically the online community, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would have, you know, had to go back to work as soon as I could see straight. And it's there, but it's not, we don't have the hierarchical structure in the atheist community like churches do. And this is the thing, that's what, I mean, I know the saying's old and worn out, but trying to organize atheists is like herding cats.
Well, and that's because we don't have a central creed, or, you know, we've got one thing that we agree on, and people are so diverse. To unite people over one tiny little aspect of who we are is really, really challenging. And I agree. I think we do need to show that we can do it too, as well, if not better, and that we need to focus on those kinds of things. But it's so tough when, you know, we only agree on one little thing. And right now I see a lot of you know, there's a lot of us and them going on everywhere, and I don't know why that is exactly per se, but it's an issue that we got to work on for sure. Like, I know what Callie did last night with her relief podcast was awesome. They raised over $3,000 to go towards Foundation Beyond Belief and their disaster relief, and ostensibly for the folks in Texas, and that's wonderful. And so why aren't we doing more of that? You know, I
think also we're so spread out. You know, it's not like we have a First Baptist I guess, church and all these different communities that we can all gather and do, either everyone donate some money to these people, or we'll do a spaghetti supper to raise money or things like that. We're all over the place.
Yeah.
So I think that is difficult too.
I think that's where groups like that Maddy and Hertzey are involved with. They're sponsored by the Minnesota Atheists, and I think that's where the local groups come into play. Is that okay? I live in a really rural town. As far as I know, there is one other person that's an atheist, an out atheist. Okay. I have another friend who is and it sounds bad, claims to be atheist, but spiritual woo.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, so for somebody like me, the closest for me is an hour away.
Yeah.
And I know there's some semblance of I'll say club for lack of better, but I don't know how active they are because I don't see much. But hours east, Philly, I'm inundated. Same thing with if I go 3 hours west to Pittsburgh. I'm stuck literally in the middle of nowhere land. And I think that's part of the problem. So when you can get, even if it's 2 or 3 people, if you can get them working on a goal and then spread out. Yes, Tracy?
Yeah. Well, like even... Go ahead, Tracy.
I happen to think that, when people talk about like the atheist community, and there's some people say, oh, there is no atheist community. We just don't believe in gods. You can't have a group of atheists. It's not a belief system. It's not this, it's not that. But I think that's a little bit sometimes disingenuous, because like when I think of the label new atheism, or, we're talking about people who are active, who are seeking out other people who have a similar worldview, either because they're sick of religious privilege, or they have an interest in advancing secularism, or they're anti-theist, and so they are opposed to the institution of religion. When I belong to my local atheist group, we could never decide what are we doing? Are we just going to get around and, we just community? Is it just hang out and yak? Is it just a social thing? Or some people really wanted to do community, give back to the community as sort of PR for atheists, to say, see, atheists aren't these terrible people that you've been taught to believe they are. And some people wanted to do, church-state separation issues. And some people wanted to do other kinds of activism. So, there's some degree of herding cats in that sense. But there are really definite specific needs that can be served within the atheist community. And, there's like recovering from religion, there's church-state separation, there's, good works, there's political activism. So there's all of these different things. There's science education, or, the advancement of, evidence-based thinking. So when I think of the atheist community, that's sort of, to me, that's sort of this umbrella for people who are engaged in some level in one or more of those kinds of activities. So, there are people who are like, I just don't believe in God and I don't really think about it. But for people who make the effort to, join a group on Facebook, or join a local chapter of something, or who are actually engaged in something, then to me, it's a little bit disingenuous for people to say, oh, there's no such thing as an atheist community. But hold on, let me go check the notifications for the 42 atheist pages that I belong to.
Yeah.
So.
And I know, like, with I'm involved in several local groups here, and just trying to get consensus for one event is tough. And look at Toronto. I'm only an hour from Toronto. I try to get to Toronto events whenever I can. My friend Jamie, he keeps trying to like, hey, we should do something like you know, let's organize a protest for something, or let's, you know, do an event for X, or, you know, he keeps trying to organize. And if we can get 20 people to show up for dinner, you know, we're doing well. And that's in Toronto. There's over, what did he say? There's something like 500 or 600 people in the meetup group alone. And most of them don't even sort of interact with that. Like I'm an organizer on that meetup, so I get notifications 2 or 3 times a week, you know, new member, new member, new member. Do I ever see them? No. Occasionally.
Well, I think part of the problem, and I'd love everybody's input on it, is point that Tracy touched on. Within the atheist community, we have so many interests outside of not believing in God, where if you look at the church, and I'm using the church as a broad term, and one goal only, and that's proselytizing. Everything they do is geared towards proselytizing. You go to a food shelter that's run by a church, you're going to be proselytized to, whether you want to be or not. Some of them actually make it that if you don't allow us to pray with you before your meal, you don't get shit.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem is, and I think this is where the local groups come into play, is, you know, they can focus in on one specific aspect, where the church doesn't have to do that. They focus in on one thing only. And I sometimes I wonder if that's kind of a all for us, or if it's in a sense of strength, because we can have a group that focuses, you know, like FFRF focuses on church state. Then you know, have ACLU and Lambda Legal. Well, Lambda's not really atheist, but they focus on the legal aspects. And you have Foundation Beyond Belief, who focuses on the welfare of others. And I think this is a matter, like, as I said, for me, I'm kind of an outlier in the group because I live very rural. I mean, the closest city is 30 minutes, and it's no bigger than the town I grew up in, when you know, in the 80s, outside of Buffalo. I mean, there's nothing there. I mean, they have one movie theater, one McDonald's, one Mighty Taco, and a Walmart. That's pretty much, I mean, that's the main attractions. You go to Pittsburgh or go to Philly, or, you know, Buffalo is 3 hours away, which is my hometown. You have a whole gamut of things. People here don't even know what an art gallery is, let alone a museum. So it's like, I think that's where we need, you know, somehow to fill in the gaps, whether we do it online. And for people that think that, you know, being an online activist is bullshit, well, fuck you. For some of us, that's all we got. Deb's heard this rant before. Yeah. I mean, I don't have anything. I don't have anything else. There's nothing. I mean, I don't drive it. I mean, I haven't driven in 20 years. Even if I wanted to, I no longer can. So driving, I mean, I'm not going to have someone drive an hour down to pick me up and an hour back. I'm pretty sure someone would. But I think that's where we need to fill in our needs.
Going to your point of, like, the, you know, proselytizing and food banks and whatnot, and like that's the only reason a lot of these people are doing it. I think that's a lot of the reason why the churches do it. I would agree.
Yes.
But being somebody who did that, and this gives me hope for humanity and why I would identify as a secular humanist as well, is a lot of those people were just doing it because that's the only way they knew how to do good works, or whatever way you'd want to call it. That's the only way they knew how to give back to humanity, was through the church, because they didn't have any other group that they were aware of in order to do that.
Yeah, that's a good caveat to throw in there. I was kind of being very broad.
No. I think you're spot on. I just think that there are a lot of people that would still want to help out and would still want to give back to their community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the Minnesota Atheists is the group that, at least, I know you go to some of the stuff.
Maybe. I'm an introvert who's borderline agoraphobic sometimes, so I don't go.
So I should start poking you about that, because we have a meetup page that has all sorts of things on there. And then Beth, you were mentioning numbers, and so I went to her meetup page to see just how many number we have, and the members we have there is 3,000. And I know that there's got to be a lot of bots or introverts and things like that, because I was looking at our atheist night at the St. Paul Saints game, and that's a minor league team.
No, independent league team.
Independent league. There's a difference?
Yes, that's okay. That's
I don't sports.
Sports ball.
I don't sports. In fact, this is the only game I go to every year, and unfortunately this year I had to miss it, which is crushing. But we had on the meetup page 63 people go, but I know that the area of the stadium that we get has more than 63 seats, and we sold out. So
that's good, at least.
Yeah, I know. It's like we're there. Somehow it just doesn't always connect that way.
What's the sort of general population of your area of Minnesota? Out of curiosity.
Like,
that's what Google's for. You
I know.
Google in front of you. You Google it.
Like how many people? What type of people?
We've got
Like,
I want to say I think the state of Minnesota is 10 to 13 million total, and so we're in the Twin Cities metro area. My understanding is that's about half of the state of Minnesota,
at least.
Okay, so you got 3,000 odd people. So this is sad. Toronto has a population of 3 million, and we have 521 meetup members.
I'm guessing there's a lot of bots.
Yeah.
But we should have way more than that. Like we should, if you guys are pushing 3,000, I
think the point is advertising.
Well, I think in Deb's case too. I mean, and this is something you've spoke to in the past. In fact, part of the reason why we started to be on the trailer park was that you were very apathetic about your atheism. Because it was not an issue up in Canada like it is down here in the States. And this is why I love getting Deb's perspective, because in Canada, the LGBT issue is not an issue. The religious right issue is really not an issue, although Peter LaBarbera is trying.
It'd be interesting for us to pull numbers and compare the last 2 years ago versus the first maybe 2 years into the Trump presidency, just to compare, to see will we see as the fear of legitimate fear of the religious right grows, as their power grows, will our membership grow, and then will that decline as Deb was talking about, the apathy and atheism, because you don't have anything to worry about.
I have a hypothesis that is completely not backed up by data.
Oh, that's
but just based on my own anecdotal experience, I think I'll talk about myself then, instead of projecting it onto other people, but I've gone through phases. So I considered myself agnostic until I was, say, 30, because I thought agnostic was the right term for it's highly unlikely, but I can't prove it, right? So I thought I should call myself agnostic. And then I got to about 30 and I was like, the probability is so close to zero as to effectively be zero. So, let's not mince words anymore. Let's just call it what it is. But it just wasn't a very big part of my identity. I didn't think about it that much. And I don't even remember why I started looking for it. But I don't know. It was maybe right after my daughter was born that I started really getting into it. And I found a Facebook group and started reading books, and I was like, oh my God. And it was so like, it was so eye-opening to me to see people, like I read The God Delusion and God is Not Great, and it was so amazing to me to have other people put into words these things that I had sort of been rolling around in the, you know, back of my head like a BB in a tuna fish can, but I had never really figured out how to put it to words. And so it was just this amazing experience of, oh my God, yes, that is so true. Yes, that is the world. Oh my God. And then, you know, and then I was really just gung-ho anti-theist, and religion must be dismantled, and it's evil, and it's the root of, you know, it's the number one cause of bigotry and hatred and tribalism and misogyny and you know, all these bad things. If we eliminate religion, we wouldn't eliminate all of it, but we'd eliminate most of it. And now I'm at a point where, like, yeah, we could eliminate religion and we would not eliminate all this shit, because we have a big bigotry and misogyny and racism, and we have all of those problems in the atheist community too, that they're all still there.
We do, but I would say that is due to people who they were able to get rid of God, but they have not been able to divest themselves from religious thinking patterns. That
is probably true to some degree. I think that is probably true to a very large degree. But what I've started to see is that you know, that whole, you know, right after 9/11, it was really important for people like Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens to start poking holes in that religious privilege. Like, why can't we ask these questions? Why should we defer? You know, why should we cede that moral authority to these people? And those were really important questions, and it was really important for people to finally stand up and do that. But now we've sort of moved beyond that. So it doesn't have that same, for me, it no longer has that same sort of magnetic appeal. But I do think that for people who, especially people who are leaving religion or just coming into their atheism, there's still a useful space for that. You know, oh my God, I'm saying something terrible about religion and I can't believe it, and I'm actually challenging religious privilege and I can't believe it, and it's so liberating. And so I think for me there's been phases, and now I'm at a point where what really matters is making the world a better place, and eliminating the institution of religion is just a part of that. And right now, in the era of Trump, whether or not somebody believes in God is not the most important question that I have to ask, and whether or not somebody is an ally. So, you know, it's just a matter, I think, of shifting priorities. But I also think we need to take care of people who are at different phases in their development as atheists. So people who are just leaving religion have different needs. And the type of religion that you've left, and whether or not you were just a little bit religious or whether you were deeply religious, I mean, those things matter. So to me, that sort of fracturing and the, you know, the us and them and the finger pointing and all of that thing is like, we've been around since September 11th now, if you're talking about new atheism as a movement. And so we're figuring out that maybe we're not all that the way we thought we were back in the day when we thought Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens could walk on water. So now we're just sort of figuring out that journey as we go along and as the world changes around us. Does that make any sense at all? I'm like totally rambling.
Completely. And I'd like to say that they could walk on water, but it had to be a really shallow mud puddle.
Yes.
Or frozen.
Yes.
Frozen water.
Plexiglass underneath, you know.
Yeah, like, you know, yeah, Chris Angel. I consider myself like a social justice cleric because I'm not good enough to be a warrior.
I would argue this. We need all the classes.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to be a cleric, or maybe a tank.
You could be a cleric.
Maybe can I be a tank?
That'd be kind of a paladin. You could be a paladin. That'd be kind of cool.
You're a social justice paladin?
Well,
that is awesome. You're an SJP.
I don't even know that. Oh, Palin, I think about that. I think I'd rather just be a cleric, stand in the background and like, please don't pick on me. I'm sensitive. But I'm just thinking this, going back to you talking about removing religion and, you know, how would the world be better off? Would it be worse off? You know, would still be, there's a really, really fantastic podcast out of the Twin Cities called Geeks Without God. And they end their show with 5 questions. And one of the questions always was, you know, what would be the world? What would still be the thing remaining? Like if religion left the world, you know, what would still be fucked up about it? And that was always interesting to hear different people's points of view, because at the same time I had started listening to like the Atheist Experience out of Austin. And, you know, they have people call in and like, they're calling like, hey, I'm an atheist. I'm calling these other atheists and we're all smart. And why are trans people so icky? And it's like, fuck you, you know, like, you know, I Ask an Atheist out of Seattle did something where they had, for 6 months, they were trying to get people to call in and say, give me a rational reason why abortion shouldn't, why we should why we should keep abortion illegal, like why we should take away women's rights, but you can't use God. And they still had people calling in, you know, giving just because it's wrong, because it's icky, because I don't like it. Like,
we have a girl here in Ontario. You may have even seen it. She debated Dillahunty on abortion, but she's an atheist. And her whole thing is, it's human life, therefore you can't kill it. And I'm like, that's exactly the same as the religion one without the God bit in it.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, the one thing that seems to get the whole anti-SJW crowd just so wound up these days is any question around gender identity or gender studies or gender fluidity or gender nonconformity. And they just, like, they completely lose their shit. And any claim they have to evidence-based thinking is just totally exposed. And, you know, so to me, that's been really demonstrative of the inability to carry, I look at evidence for the God question, but I don't necessarily look at evidence for anything else.
Well, and that's the religious thinking. Yeah.
The motivation for, like, for me, the reason to eliminate religion isn't because I'm smarter than everybody else, although I may be. Not really. I'm not smarter than anybody. I'm not smart at all, actually. I'm just making shit up. But the reason for eliminating religion would be to make the world a better place. It would be to eliminate a source of teaching people to hate other people for what they believe or for what they look like or for who they love or for the way they raise their children or for any of that shit. It's to eliminate a source of human suffering.
Yes.
And what's been disillusioning for me is that doesn't seem, that's not universal. That some people seem to just be really more interested in saying, I'm smarter than you are because I see through the God question and you don't, but there doesn't seem to be any underlying motivation to actually alleviate human suffering and to improve the quality of life of people.
But a lot of that, again, does come back to that religious mindset, because what's one of the main thrusts of religiosity is, I'm smarter than you because I picked the right God and I'm special and I'm made in God's image, so I'm extra special. And so that's that mindset again of, well, I have to, there's no God, I figured that out, but I still have to find a way to make me more special. And they fall into those traps of thought processes that make them feel that way,
right,
even though they don't grasp the fact that they're being douches to everybody else, because they're terrified of losing that "but I'm special" feeling.
And what's troubling about that to me is that something that would go away in a generation without religion, or is that something that's more inherent to the human experience, that we would that religion sort of reinvent itself in some other way to perpetuate all of those baser instincts.
Well, I think
yeah, go ahead, Beth. Yeah, you've been trying to say.
No, I just was going to say, it goes back to what Deb's saying. We have 2,000 years plus of religious type indoctrination that we are trying to overcome. And if you break down any argument of, you know, whether it's LGBTQ, racism, misogyny, whatever, any of the social justice issues, it comes down to one thing and one thing only. Ick factor. Yeah. I mean, like even like the debate that Matt Dillahunty had about abortion, it was the ick factor. If you talk to anybody that's against transgender, it's the ick factor or not understanding. Same thing with the you know, being lesbian or gay. It's the ick factor. Oh, yeah, they're all for seeing two women fucking, but you put two guys together, oh, gross.
Yeah.
Even as a member, since I can remember, I mean, I've been gay since I was 5. I didn't officially come out until I was in my 20s. In fact, hell, I didn't even know what the word homosexuality meant before I went to college. Okay, that's how sheltered I was. And I remember the first time I saw two guys kiss, and I will readily admit I had the ick response. I'm like, wait a minute. It's no different than when I kiss my girlfriend. So it's like the saying goes, hate is learned. It has to be taught. So, yeah, it's going to take a generation, maybe 2. There was a meme I saw today. I mean, okay, Trump may build the wall, but my generation, and I'm going to guess the girl is about 10, is going to tear it down. Whether the wall actually gets built or not doesn't matter. I mean, it's going to take a generation or 2. And Hitler and Stalin both said, and this is something that Trump and the religious right adhere to if you listen to their propaganda, is you tell a lie long enough and loud enough, people are going to believe it. And we're seeing the fruits of that labor, and it's been an agenda point for the Reich to dumb down society. I mean, it's, you know, and it's going to take all of us together. But yeah, when it's like Deb said, if you have the ick factor and you throw out rational thinking, for lack of a better word, concerning whatever social issue it is, it's pointless even discussing it sometimes. Because you're just talking to a brick wall.
Oh, it is. And I mean, I've come across, you know, atheists who they say they're critical thinkers or whatnot, and they're argue me blue in the face that, you know, transgender isn't a thing. And it boggles my mind. But if you frame that in terms of religious thought patterns, it does make more sense. It's still fucking stupid, but it makes more sense that they would cling to that because they never learned actual critical thinking. They just figured out the God bit. And I think there's a lot of that still out there. And the problem is if you have somebody who is an atheist, but they never learned critical thinking, and they're following anti-vax shit and anti-GMO, and they're like, you know, trans isn't a thing and whatnot, they're going to perpetuate that mode of thought because they still are clinging to, I want to be special and I want to be different, and I'm, you know, I may not be in God's image, but I can see through the conspiracy, damn it. You know, like that's what we're dealing with, I think.
Jet fuel can't melt steel beams, man.
Yeah.
Well, and you hit on a good point, Deb, with the whole anti-GMO, anti-vax. Everybody thinks that it's a left-right issue. I know more people that are anti-science that say they are atheists, that they are, quote, critical thinkers, that vaccines cause autism. or that that the CDC is lying to us, or that GMOs and glyphosate and all that shit causes cancer, or that they're going to inject you with foreign DNA and that's why you're going to become trans.
Yeah.
That's
what happened.
That argument of late,
that would be kind of cool.
You know what it was, Maddy? It was one of those secret gay rings that Pat Robertson was talking about.
Yeah,
but it's the secret trans ring. There we go.
Oh, that's why I don't wear jewelry.
See,
what's even more...
I'm going to hetero all of you people.
What's even more bizarre is the other day I was going through my crazy feed, as I call it, and Barack Obama and Michelle have been out of the White House now for about 7.5 months. So you would think that some of the garbage against them would slowly dissipate. Michelle Obama, trans.
Yeah.
That fucking video I debunked 3 years ago is back in the news again. And people are like, she's not, nothing against Michelle Obama, she's not our first lady anymore.
Yeah. And the thing
we have
I never
Russian
understood...
Playboy pinup as our first lady.
What was that,
not that I have a
Hertzey?
Oh, they can't get rid of the talking points.
I know.
They keep bringing the same things over and over again. So I do have a question for the panel.
Yes.
All right. We know that Maddy would be a social justice cleric.
Yes.
What would the rest of you be? You get to choose your own class.
I don't know because I've never gamed.
Does it have to be Dungeons and Dragons thing? Because I don't know anything about it.
You could use World of Warcraft or
never done that either.
Oh.
None of us are gamers. We're
Why are we here?
Sorry.
They're like, we're done. All right, that's it.
I admit I would probably be the social justice bard because I'm loud.
Well, so am I. I don't know, but I don't like.
Sing.
I don't like to sing.
You don't know that. Okay, it's technically true, but you don't know that. Actually, one time I was at a counter protest for the Planned Parenthood march, and I was just getting over a cold and still louder than the person with the bullhorn. So
see,
I can.
Are you a good singer?
I can't sing. I don't like to sing except when I'm alone in my car. So.
Hertzey, are you a good singer?
Am I a good singer?
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Yeah, you sounds like you got pipes. Love it. I would just be a social justice bitch.
That
works. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not a very nice person.
I'm just a person with glitter. I'm a bitch that has to say sorry by.
I would have a hard time with it because I probably would be considered anti-social justice warrior, but it's not because I'm against the social justice issues. It's just that my atheism has nothing to do with the fact that I'm gay, and being gay has nothing to do with my atheism. I have a tendency to compartmentalize. Each other. As far as me being a lesbian, no, because I was okay with being a lesbian even when I was a fundamentalist because it ain't in the fucking Bible. So I never had an issue with it. Now my school did. But as far as everything else, I'm a fucking human. Of course I'm going to be bothered when I see my friends being slammed, okay, in my case online, because I really don't get out much. Yeah, I'm going to have a problem with it, but I don't tie it into my atheism. So some people would probably consider me anti-social justice warrior, but I'm not in the sense that I'm very concerned about the issues that they are, but I don't connect it to my atheism. My atheism is one thing and one thing only, and that is I don't believe in God.
Yep. By the way, Booleanator has joined us in the chat. Hi, Dave. And he says that the gay agenda still hasn't contacted him after all these years.
I know. So I'm still.
Can we get your number?
Yeah.
Send you a pamphlet.
Yeah.
I haven't even
Is the gay agenda like leave me the hell alone?
No, but brunch is involved.
I still haven't even gotten my toaster oven yet.
She wants the gay toaster oven, man.
I want my Ellen toaster oven.
Ellen toaster oven.
Yeah,
it's all under your seats. Like you get a toaster oven and you get a toaster oven.
I had to go and buy my own.
Nah.
Well, I should rephrase it. The community helped me buy one.
There you go.
Send your receipt to Minnesota Atheists at.
As a board member, I cannot confirm this will actually happen.
It's 3 years old.
See, I got the hetero white chick toaster oven, so it's not nearly as exciting. I hear. I don't know.
It's still hot and buttered.
I figure it probably still burns food, so.
It does. I found that out the other day when I accidentally, the dial got knocked 100 degrees hotter than it was supposed to be. And now, luckily for me, it started burning the crumbs in the bottom before my actual food. But yeah, it set off the smoke detector and all that fun stuff.
I've gotten to the point where when I'm doing something for longer than 10 minutes because staying awake is an issue for me now, I set my timer.
Yeah.
Because, like, I'm like, Deb, I burnt my dinner again.
I know, I was going to say, I've gotten a few PM. She's like, fuck, I burnt my dinner to a crisp. Damn it.
So my daughter was...
yeah, go ahead.
My daughter was cooking chicken. This is like 3 months ago now. And she was really upset because she was baking the chicken in the oven. And she's like, it's been baking for almost over an hour and I can't get the temperature over 100 degrees. And so I go look at the meat thermometer and say, honey, you've got this in Celsius. Like,
I'm notorious for not turning the oven on as well.
Yeah, she'll be like, oh, I'm going to go make my dinner. And an hour and a half later, she's like, fuck, I didn't turn the oven on.
See, this is what a stroke does to you. It, like, scrambles your brain. And it's like, you forget to do shit. I don't know how many times, poor Deb was like, damn it, I forgot to turn the oven on, or forgot to set the timer, or I fell asleep.
Well, that's
or then
okay. Now she
my
tells
favorite
me...
is...
Yes?
Go ahead.
I was going to say...
We're probably going to say the same thing.
The nap.
Sorry.
The nap thing.
The nap. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
If she goes to have a nap before the show, I now will text her to wake her up because, she'll forget to set the alarm or something. And she can't even reply to me because it's an international text, but at least it'll make her phone go off.
But
although I love the time where I was using Google Voice and I was trying to say wakey wakey and I forget what the fuck it said, but it was something absolutely ridiculous.
Like walkie
on your
walkie
end.
Or walkie walkie.
Yeah, I forget what it was and I was like, ooh, that was, and I didn't notice, right? It's like, great, got the message. Do you want me to send it? I'm like, yeah, send, because I'm like multitasking. And I look at it half an hour later, I'm like, well, that was stupid.
But this is what kills me. Here we are, the 2, 4, 6, 7 of us, or 6 or 7. I can't count. I'm seeing double.
Well, that's because
we're just talking.
Yeah, there's 2 of them.
I mean, we're just talking, normal talking shit. We are no different than anybody else in this country. The only thing that makes us, and in Deb's case in Canada, the only thing that makes us quote different is the fact that we don't believe in God. That's it. But yet people still marginalize us to some degree. Whether then you add on other issues, in my case being lesbian, and it gets even worse. I just think it's asinine.
I never understood this idea that different, like, I am so against conformity. Like, I am so non-conformist that I don't realize I'm not conforming half the time. It's kind of funny. But in this tribalist idea, I just don't understand ever. Like, when somebody's like, they're such and such, I'm like, so fucking what? Like when they say Michelle Obama's trans woman, I'm like, so the fuck, what if she was? Why is that an issue ever? And they're like, oh, well, she's a trans woman and they adopted the children. So what? Who cares?
It's an insult to them. It's what they would be insulted by. If somebody would say, you're trans, you can't have children, you had to adopt your kids. So they take whatever they would feel most insulted by and just act like it applies to everyone else.
Yeah. But what I find even more bizarre, using the hurricane as an example, if we as atheists don't do the same thing that churches are doing, i.e. last night being case in point, then we're bad people. And it's like,
yeah,
you know, it was like after, what was it, the Wolf Blitzer, where he was in, was it a tornado? I think it was a couple of years ago. He interviewed this woman, and the woman goes,
Oklahoma.
aren't you, oh yeah, Oklahoma, aren't you thankful to God or whatever? I don't remember the dialogue. And she goes, well, I'm an atheist.
Rebecca Vitzman.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, I
Rebecca Vitzman was her name, I think.
Yep.
Cool.
And it's just like, hello, people. That's it. The only thing that separates you and I from whatever tragedy or challenge life throws at us is the fact that we don't believe in God. And I just feel so.
If he knew ahead of time that she was an atheist, he wouldn't have even put her on TV.
I doubt it. I highly agree with you.
Yeah.
She moved out to Washington. She moved out to Washington State, and she now heads the outreach program for yes, thank you. Yeah, because she's part of the Washington. I forget if it's Seattle Atheists or Washington Atheists.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's so cool.
Yay! See, this is the fun part. That's what I like to see.
And that's why groups like yours, I think, are important. I mean, any group is, not just yours specifically, but I think it meets the different needs of all of us.
Absolutely.
And we do, I think, yes, we're Atheists Talk, but as part of Minnesota Atheists, we do a lot of, we may not do the community stuff that I'd like to see us do as well, because it's new to us as far as like going to hospitals and, helping out. But there's a lot of atheist groups that do helping the homeless, and we do a lot of fun stuff, and we do provide a community and a place for fellow atheists to meet and for fellow atheists to become just friends, and where the God question doesn't have to come up. It doesn't matter. We're just people helping each other, and I see that growing, and I see groups like ours being instrumental to it, but not like the only way to do it.
Yeah.
But it's an organic kind of non-GMO grassroots kind of thing.
At Christmas, I've started. My in-laws are quite religious, and when we've gone to Christmas, like they're actually singing Christmas carols in German, and I don't speak any German, but I've avoided the last 2 years of Christmas Day and had people come here to the house that either weren't welcome with their families or didn't want to put up with the headache of, oh, I'm an atheist at Christmas, or LGBT stuff and whatnot. So to me, it's so much more fun just to have people come over. We play Cards Against Humanity. We eat a shit ton of food. People who want to drink a lot of beer or whatever, drink a lot of booze. And it's just being people together. And to me, that's so much more fun. And I do it on Christmas Day just because there are more people that may not have anywhere to be that day. And it's kind of shitty when everybody else is like, oh, I'm going with my family, and you're stuck at home. So that's why I picked that day. It doesn't really matter what day it is. But it's just so much more fun just to be people together and enjoy our company and talk about stuff and make jokes about having roast baby instead of turkey and things like that.
Baby back ribs.
There you go. Well, and it was funny this past year because I put it out on Meetup for our local groups just so people knew like where the address was and all of that. And the local TV station was looking for, one of the reporters was doing a story on what non-Christians do at Christmas. And like Christmas Eve day, I get a phone call. It's like, hi, this is so-and-so from CTV News. Can I come over and interview you about your, I called it Heathen Christmas. And I'm like, come on over. So, you know, I was on for all of like 30 seconds, but hey, you know, let's get out there.
Fly.
What's that?
So things that wouldn't fly in the U.S.
Yeah, well, I mean, the spot she did, she interviewed Sikhs, because we have a lot of Sikh people here, and she interviewed some Jews, of course, because Hanukkah, and she interviewed another, what was it, an Olympic swimmer from the area who also didn't come out and say he was an atheist, but was like, yeah, I don't celebrate anything. And that kind of stuff. What else was there?
Right in.
Yeah. There you go.
You know, we still put up a Christmas tree, and I mean, part of that's because my spouse is still loves them some Jesus, but
okay.
You know, I like Christmas. I love Christmas lights. I love Christmas trees. I just don't give a shit about all the religious aspects of it. But we use it as a time for like, hey, everybody's got the day off work that, you know, not all of us, because a lot of us do healthcare stuff, but like we may or may not have day, but we'll have a day where people just come over and we eat shit, we talk, we have a family day. And that's why I like Thanksgiving better, because we do the same damn thing. But you know, Christmas, we got to give each other shit. But like, that's all that for us, that's Christmas. Is like our Christmas as atheists isn't really all that different.
No, it's not.
From any Christian Christmas.
We don't pray and we don't talk about Jesus, and that's...
Yeah, I've actually started a new tradition with my family, because my family is actually we're all atheists. And the tradition is to join the Minnesota Atheists, because they have a movie and Chinese food every year on Christmas Day, and we all meet up at the theater. We all go to our different movies, and then we join up at the Chinese restaurant across the parking lot.
Do you chop the head off the duck that's smiling?
The
The goose that's still smiling, you got to chop the head off?
I did not.
No?
No.
Oh, that's a wonderful Christmas story to tell.
That sounds interesting. And then a group of friends and I, for Thanksgiving, we'll do Friendsgiving the Sunday before, the Sunday after, and usually we're getting to like 50 people in her place, and we have turkey and stuffing, vegan something. And it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, you just have people over and enjoy each other's company.
Well, this year it was suggested last year, and I didn't get around to doing it, but I think I might this year. If I find, like at the thrift store, either a cheap or empty manger, and put it up, and everybody brings like some kind of old action figure to stick in it, and see what we come up with. I think we're gonna do that this year.
That'd be funny. And whoever has the best one should get the prize of some kind.
Yeah, like I'll bake something extra that the person with the best thing to put. It doesn't even have to be an action figure. It can be whatever. Like friends of mine a few years ago, they were having a housewarming party, but they were combining apartments, so they didn't really need anything. So what they said was, we're gonna have an ugly item contest. Everyone go to the thrift store before and pick out what you think the ugliest thing is, and we'll put them all on the shelf together. And that was really fun. We got some stuff.
Is it okay if I steal your nativity scene idea?
Please go ahead.
Just to interject.
But you have to put a maple leaf on it.
Done.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that too. Dipping syrup on the side. There you go.
All right, we're good. We're good.
Sorry, Beth, what was that?
I was going to say, just to interject concerning last night with Foundation Beyond Belief and Atheists Manifesto, they raised $3,300, and according to FBB, we are happy to announce that All Hands Volunteers has been chosen as the first beneficiary for the Hurricane Harvey Humanist Disaster Recovery Funding. AHV has a proven track record in assisting with disaster recovery in the Houston area, as the organization worked with Fort Bend County residents affected by flooding in 2016. And they're thoroughly vetted and have received disaster recovery funding before. So that's where the money, Kelly and friends, is going to.
Awesome. By the way, Bullionator suggesting you put a pot leaf on the nativity scene as well.
Right. Would we have to put it really high?
I'm thinking that the star that they usually have up, like both the maple leaf and the pot leaf put together.
There we go. Well, there is, or you could do, there's a Canadian flag with a pot leaf in the middle.
Ooh, we could do that.
There you go. Because you guys know we're legalizing next year. Like countrywide.
So jealous.
It's awesome.
Flipping jealous.
It's funny because I don't actually smoke it. I never cared for it, but I'm all for it, my friends. You know,
I don't smoke it either. I just like the idea of decriminalizing it and getting it so that we don't have people going to prison for pretty much nothing.
Exactly. And it's also tax revenue.
Yes. The money that you can make off
tons of tax revenue.
Huge money. And we need that for free healthcare, you know.
Yeah, my state's the best place to grow it probably, but we will be the last to legalize, is the cruel irony.
No.
Yeah, especially if you get Roy Moore into the legislation.
That's Alabama. I'm not with that.
Oh wait, yeah, wrong state. What the fuck am I thinking?
You're in a crazy state.
Not all Southerners.
What's the difference?
Ooh, shots
we have
fired.
a few more teeth, and we sometimes wear shoes.
What are shoes for?
Well, you know, actually, Maddy, you mentioned earlier, you said that one of your kids was evangelical but not fundamentalist, and I thought there's a difference.
Right, yeah, because he still wants to go out and like proselytize, but he's like open with he has no problems with LGBT rights. He's got no problems with me. You know, he knows that I'm an atheist, and he's not like beating me up over the head with it. I haven't got his Bible hasn't hit me once.
That's good.
So I mean, there is a difference. I mean, and I would label him an evangelical. He would probably label himself, like we did when I was an evangelical, as a non-denominational, because it's not the church that matters, it's the Bible, and that's what's most important.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you're a fucking evangelical. Just, it's fine, sort of, but
it's fine as that's gonna be fine.
Right. So I mean that would be, I mean, in the end, it all comes down to some semantics. Like, it's like, okay, so you're a Christian that loves you, Jesus, but doesn't think that I should like have my rights trounced on. Okay, fine, whatever.
That's
you're a step down. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if you're gonna have to Jesus, that's the best way to Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah. Evangelicals are more to the witnessing and mild proselytization, where fundamentalism gets into the heavy proselytizing and all that stuff.
Isn't that Venn diagram pretty close to being a circle, though?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah.
And I actually
go ahead, Maddy.
Well, I've often said that, you know, one of the first thing that got me started questioning was the fact that, you know, I'm trans, and that was a sin for the church I was in, and that's really what led me down to then like learning about science and then the problem of evil and things like that. But like, if I had gone to a super duper liberal church, I may still have been in the church.
Like, for instance, the church that I grew up with, the United Church, they had women clergy since the 30s. They are quite happy with LGBT clergy. They were the first to embrace marriage equality, all of that. So as a trans person, for the most part, you should have been very welcomed in the United Church. I mean, there were going to be like the congregation my mother went to, which was a bunch of white hicks out in the middle of nowhere. Maybe not so much. Like I remember when they got a new minister who was a young French Canadian guy, and they were like, he's French. I don't know if I like that. And it's like, he's from fucking Quebec, people. Like, lighten up, you old
Did you see the way he kissed old granny on the cheek?
Well, growing up, I always wanted to be a minister, but it was really hard considering the denomination I grew up in is against women ministers. And I used to have a roundabout with our pastors about that, and they didn't support me, but they didn't dissuade me. But then I went to a Wesleyan Methodist college that didn't have an issue with, you know, female ministers. It did have an issue with me being gay, though.
Funny
we
enough.
Yeah, we did have a slight problem. That what I find so funny is that most of these female classmates, I can't really speak to the males because I really didn't talk to many of the guys there. Most of them, I find, even I can't say they are lesbian or not, but most of them aren't married, and we're in our 50s now, so.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say you were. It's funny you say you were going to be a minister. I had actually was considering going to the seminary for a long time too, and I look back now and it's like, well, I sort of did, just differently, because like I would have been happy to have a congregation of 100 or 200 people, and now it's like my own podcast numbers, I can look and go, I'm way more than that. And then Atheists Talk too. It's like, we talk to more people as an atheist podcast than I would have ever talked unless I was like a Joel Osteen or whatever, you know.
Yeah, some type. Shit like that.
Yeah, you know, but I mean, that's really selling your soul. But
yeah. Well, I can't really dish my education. I mean, I never graduated, so I didn't finish the program or go on to seminary, but I use what I learned in college as far as theology and hermeneutics and apologetics more now than I think I would have if I had gone into the ministry.
Yeah.
But I'm just using it in reverse.
I love it when, you know, we get some Christian who's like, "Ooh, you don't know the scripture." And she's like, "Would you like that in the Greek or the Hebrew?" It's like, don't talk to ex-seminary about not knowing the Bible.
And well, it's like, I can't remember who, was it? I think it's Stan Barker, but Andrew Seidel likes to use it a lot, that the road to being an atheist is paved by a lot of people that have, you know, a lot of Bibles, because most of us that came from that background have read our Bibles and chucked it out the window.
My favorite thing is when an atheist or when a theist out and around says that's not in the Bible, and I can whip out I'm like, which Bible version would you like? I've got all of them here.
Yeah.
And of course, my all-time favorite when they're throwing Bible shit at me is like, so what's your take on Ezekiel 23:20, and why is that never taught in Sunday school?
Oh.
Is that the slavery one?
Oh, better than that.
Is that the selling your daughter because she got raped?
Oh, no. Even better.
See, it's like there's so many things to pick from.
let me quote for you, because it is my favorite verse. And she lusted after her lovers, whose members were like that of donkeys, and whose emissions were like that of horses.
What kind of emissions? Would you clarify?
Of the ejaculate source.
Oh.
You are not that innocent.
There's a lot of people in the Navy? A lot of seamen?
Yes. Oh. Yes. Horses and seamen. You got it.
Water sports.
Yes. I'm sure that was involved too.
Yeah, it's really mind-blowing because, as Deb said, we'll get into my topic, besides the satanic panic, is dealing with homosexuality in the Bible. and they'll start throwing out all these verses. It's like, you need to read the verse ahead of it and the verse after it.
Yeah. Well, Ezekiel 23 is all raunchy, but verse 20 takes the cake, really. You can't beat horses and donkeys. Well, you
I gotta
can,
go back and read this.
You should. In fact, when I go to hotels now, I will get out the Bible, and the Gideons, it'll have that page where if you're lonely, read this. If you're sad, read that. If you want to sin, read this. I will write at the top, for a good time, read Ezekiel 23:20.
I saw that in the bathroom stall once.
There you go.
You should say if you're or if you're horny.
Yeah, if you're horny. Or if you really like horses, if you're into equine
they cannot give enthusiastic consent, so therefore I will not have sex with a horse.
There you go. Exactly. But it's the Bible, so who cares about consent, right?
That's true.
That's true.
I do not consent to
I'm just thinking the size of horses and going, nope.
That's a whole other discussion for another night. Because, all I'll say is there's a website for that, but don't ask me how I know. It has nothing to do with me.
Rule 34.
Yes.
Which is?
If it exists, there's porn of it.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Rule 1, don't go.
Yeah.
And on that note, it's kind of the end of the night.
Oh, I knew it was coming soon.
I know, but I'm surprised I've done well. I've been fighting a sore throat since yesterday, and I only had one hack attack, so I'm pretty pleased, but I don't want to push it. So first of all, Hertzey and Maddy, thank you so much for joining us. It was a lot of fun, and jumping in so quickly with us too was awesome. So we appreciate it, and even finding a special room, and you guys are professional as shit.
That's right.
Sure.
That's right. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Totally professional.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh shit! You guys have to come up here with that accent sometime. It would be fun.
Oh, don't you know?
I can't leave the United States.
What?
I don't have the right ID.
We can fix that.
Oh.
Project.
I'll wait till it's winter. Just walk across the border.
No, people are doing that now. Just Minnesota, straight up.
You said you had weed, so.
We do. We have a lot of weed.
I've never.
And we're going to get more. So
don't smoke it, eat it.
Oh,
you can use it and make cookies.
We're gonna come up to Canada and have a lot of special syrup.
Okay. I could probably facilitate that. Yeah. How about you tell everybody where they can hear you or see you and all of that fun stuff?
So we are on the Sunday morning at 9:50 a.m. and you can find us at 950am.com. You can stream us live. There's also an app at 9:50 a.m. Or you can just wait and we'll put it out on the internet. We're on iTunes. Are we on Google Play yet?
Yes.
We are?
I think. Ooh, if not, I better fix that. That's my job.
Like I said, I could not do this without you. Anyways, we should be on Google Play and Stitcher, and then wherever else you're
Libsyn. I found you on Libsyn.
Yep.
Yes, we are on Libsyn. And then we're hoping to expand a little more into Facebook. We actually found the Facebook page. So you can find us at Atheists Talk on Facebook and at Atheists Talk on Twitter. Anywhere else?
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go to atheisttalk.libsyn.com, you'll see all of our show notes for all of our shows and links. Otherwise, if you look for us on Facebook.
Also on Patreon. We just started a Patreon, and so you can find us at patreon.com/atheisttalk.
Send us money, and God will forgive you of your sins.
There you go.
Selling indulgences on Patreon.
Yes, and we may even indulge you depending on what your wish is.
Oh my!
Just no Ezekiel stuff, because
No
no
horses.
consent. No horses. There's no consent involved.
Yes.
Yes.
Consent
Yeah,
is required
consent.
for each indulgence.
Okay. And Maddy, did you want to plug your show too?
Oh, sure. Well, my podcast is a Minnesota Trans-Atheist. And you can find me on Twitter or Facebook at Trans-Atheist Pod. I'm also there on Instagram, or if you bump into me at like Clash of Clans or some stupid game, I usually use Trans-Atheist Pod too. But yeah, Minnesota Trans-Atheist, any podcast that you find, podcast app to use, that's where I'm at. My show page is at thequeerlife.org, category Trans-Atheist Pod, or you just click on the Trans-Atheist Pod tab, because I'm part of the Queer Life family. Yeah. Otherwise, if you're ever, in Eagan, Minnesota, hit me up and, go out for a beer or a coffee, or not like a Luke Cage coffee. I mean, just like a real coffee.
And if you're in the Twin Cities, you can hit me up and, I don't know, coffee, whiskey. I don't do beer. There's a lot of...
Whiskey is just distilled beer.
Okay, actually, I love cocktails. Get me to a martini bar.
There you go.
We have a speakeasy in Eagan.
And there's one in Minneapolis, too.
I need to visit Minnesota, apparently.
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe I should move to
Milwaukee first. Yes, you should, Beth. There you go. And speaking of Beth, let's tell everybody where to find you.
Easiest way to find me is on Twitter, Dune998. That connects to Havoc and Chaos, my blog over on blogger.com. And it also connects to my Facebook, which is Beth A. Hambridge. Friend me, send me a note, please, if you don't have common friends, so I don't delete you. I'm also on YouTube under Beth A. Hambridge, and I am also on Google+.
Awesome. Miss Morgan, where can we find you?
All right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Mostring. That's MOSTRING. And you can also find me on Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer. And you can catch me on the Bi Skeptical podcast with Trav Mamone. It comes about every 2 weeks. And it's on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spreaker, wherever you get your podcasts, really. So
Awesome. And Miss Tracy.
I am on Facebook. I am Godless Mama on Facebook. And I'm on Twitter at The Godless Mama. And you can also find Morgan and me on Facebook as The Political Feminist.
Fabulous. And of course, you can also catch me Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. I got YouTube beat because I go on at midnight with Holy Crap, the Vlogcast, which of course is run by Shujin Tribble and our motley cast of characters from around the globe. It was really cool that Chris from England joined us this week. We hadn't seen him for a while. And Jake Farr-Wharton from Australia popped in for a little bit. He was running and almost tripped over a wallaby. That was fun. But yeah, join us Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. And that's holycrapthevlogcast.com. And as I say, I do pop up over on Steve McRae's channel through the Great Debate Community and the Great Debate Community channel. So if you're on YouTube, those are some places that I do often pop up. I was there a lot over the weekend. So you can catch some stuff in really good conversation with Aaron Raw on Saturday night. So go check that out over on Steve's channel for sure. So next week, I'm going to be motorcycling across Eastern Canada. So I'm leaving things up to the ladies. We'll see what they come up with. We have some potential guests in or we'll see what they come up with. So I will not be here, but Morgan, guess what?
Yep.
I know.
I'm running it.
Yes, you are. And don't worry, I'll give you a crash refresher if you need one. No worries. So until then, next week, I will almost forgot a couple of things. First of all, of course, is we always like to mention the Taylor Scholarship over at the Whitefields Educational Foundation. The scholarship was created by David Michael of my Book of Mormon. And The Whitefields Educational Foundation provides counseling for people who have left or are leaving religion. The scholarship provides funding for that counseling for folks who need it but can't afford to pay for it. So if you want to give money to another charity, that's also one that we certainly recommend. Right now, the folks in Texas probably need your cash a little more, but you know, Whitefields is always there too down the road. And we do have a Patreon as well, Beyond the Trailer Park, if you feel like throwing a buck or two our way. We certainly appreciate that. We use that to pay for our Spreaker hosting. If anybody was liking to listen live on Spreaker, and I know we haven't done it recently, I apologize. There's been some major technical issues with Spreaker not talking to my mixer, and I haven't figured out what the problem is there. I'm going to have to get involved with tech support and find that out. So my apologies that there hasn't been anything live on Spreaker, but I am doing my best to get the show out the same night. So hopefully that'll tide you guys over until I can get the live thing working again. My apologies there. So until then, next week, I will leave everybody with our dear friend Dave Foda's Human Creed for All of Mankind, and we will see the ladies next week, and I will see you in about 3 weeks.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries. I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.